So I'm going to be talking about Medical Education Partnership Initiative, which is called MEPI in short. And probably many of you, if not all of you, have heard about the MEPI program which is running across Africa. As I listened to Erica's talk this morning, I said to myself, if any program in Africa has done anything to medical education, along the lines that she was talking, in light of the WHO report that she referenced, that program is MEPI. And actually it struck me for the first time that as we look at countries where those studies could be done, MEPI represents a wonderful opportunity. Of course, it would be a skewed opportunity because of what is going on in the MEPI schools is fairly different from what is going on elsewhere. So, what is MEPI? My presentation will talk about the background, a little bit about the background of MEPI, and then provide some examples regarding what is being achieved in the area of medical education transformation. Clearly, and some of us have been around this continent for some time, we don't need to produce birth certificates to show that. What is occurring in the last 4 years, because this is a 5-year program so far, what is occurring in the last 4 years in the MEPI schools is clearly transformational. I've not seen it before happening across Africa to the scale, level that it is happening today. A few days ago, across my screen, there was a mail that a number of you may have seen. And this was attached. When I looked at it, I said, this is interesting. Is this the one who sent it, who is in our midst, said he was enjoying a sunset where I was in Denmark. To me, I said, is this sunset for Africa as far as health professional education goes, or is it sunrise? And to me, it is sunrise. What is happening with MEPI is clearly not sunset, but sunrise. What led to the establishment of a MEPI program by the United States government were a multitude of things. And one of those is the obvious physician shortage on the continent, specifically in the PEPFAR countries. Because the PEPFAR programs were not delivering to the level they should be delivering. The resources, the finances were available to buy the drugs, to have people have their HIV testing, and so on and so on. But services were not reaching the people they should be reaching. That was one reason. That the United States government thought that if they're investing so much with PEPFAR dollars, they need to do something about the health workforce, which had become an obstacle in achieving the objectives of the PEPFAR program. And as you can see here, the map of Africa basically does not exist when we are talking about the physician workforce across, compared to other countries around the world. But also coinciding with those experiences of PEPFAR, about 5 years ago or so, maybe longer, actually longer now, it's about 8 years, we had done a study across Africa looking at medical schools and the challenges they are facing and so on and so forth. And publication was available in the Lancet showing that these institutions were having many challenges that they were not able to live up to people's expectations. So MEPI came in very handy in order to try and contribute to solving the problem. Contribute, because MEPI alone cannot solve the problems of this continent. So what are the goals? Intention was to provide direct support, to have transformative models of medical education in sub-Saharan Africa by strengthening clinical and research capacity. Read it broadly, strengthening service delivery and research capacity. As you listened carefully this morning, Erica said, are you listening? Are you listening? Produce the evidence that is required in order to support recommendations. It is on the basis of evidence that interventions, proper interventions can be put in place. MEPI is trying to contribute to building research capacity in Africa as well. So the expected outcome is the increased quality and quantity of healthcare workers and faculty, the teachers, who are trained and retained in their home countries to provide health services and conduct relevant research. So how is MEPI administered? First of all, it was a $130 million program to last 5 years, 2010 to 2015. 100 million came from PEPFAR, 30 came from NIH. As you know, NIH, its focus is research. 30 came from NIH, and hence the total of 130. These were awarded to 13 institutions, lead institutions across Africa through a competitive process. However, these 13 institutions are in 12 countries. 12 because one country, South Africa, took 2 of those awards, while the other countries took 1 each. Where are these programs? On this slide, we can see the countries where the MEPI programs are. Botswana, Ethiopia, Ghana, just in case from the back you can't read it. Botswana, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And these little dots or big dots here drops illustrate or indicate where these institutions are that received the funding. Don't worry about the color coding. It's not relevant at this moment. Again, this map shows you probably in a better way how the resources were received. It's obvious that in the center of Africa, nothing. In West Africa, there's Nigeria and Ghana. But most of the money is down on the East Coast and South Africa, which is not unusual. If you examine the way funds are awarded across Africa from different funders, you find the same distribution. So that's not the way MEPI intended it. That's what happened when the proposals came in and they were judged competitively. Those that were able to win, that is the distribution. And it doesn't matter whether you are looking at EDCTP grants or whatever. Usually this is the distribution. Of course, it shouldn't be like that, and it shouldn't remain like that. We would want that to change. So this is just a picture, photo from last year, where, again, like this meeting, people came together because every year MEPI has got an annual symposium, and this year it is going to be in Mozambique. So here is some of the progress areas. Because we are in year 4 now, so I'm talking about up to the end of year 3. And these will be just a few examples to illustrate what is going on. There's continued improvement in medical education training curricula. You will be amazed. Institutions had curricula which are not being revised for more than a decade. And they were continuing to train. And by saying more than a decade, I'm being conservative, not to embarrass the picture. Some were much longer than that. But they have realized the importance of doing curriculum revision because there are changing circumstances, and therefore we need to put that into consideration. E-learning, which again featured brilliantly this morning in Erica's presentation, e-learning has attracted a lot of attention. Why? Not because there are gadgets to play with, but because the continent is faced with an increasing number of students, huge number of students. In some countries it is just amazing. That people are creatively trying to find how else can we reach the many students and give them still quality education. Dr. Katumba was talking of, can 5 institutions share a lecture in anatomy? This is part of the attempt to address the shortage. So as you will hear from this program later on, although I haven't seen her, the young lady from Tanzania, but I hope she's around KCMC, giving their experience at KCMC. There's a lot of emphasis on faculty development. Again, featured very much this morning. We need to develop faculty. This business of having come out of whichever training institution one did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and thinking that is still able to be a trainer, educator today is probably living in history. We need to do faculty development. We need to add to the existing pool of faculty in order to do a good job. And we need to look at the quality of that faculty. Strengthen the research capacity, I have already mentioned. But one of the striking things is, while there's more effort by faculty to do research on diseases or health systems, there is much less to undertake research on medical education, which is a bit of a disappointment. We should, as the consortium across Africa, we should have seen an avalanche of research in medical education. Yes, it is being done more than it was done before, but not to the level that we should expect. Social accountability was also mentioned this morning, and indeed institutions are paying great attention to issues of social accountability. Recently, in May this year, there was this new development that in Ottawa, that the Association of Faculties of Medicine of Canada announced the creation of the Charles Bolden International Social Accountability Award that will recognize outstanding accomplishment in implementing the principles of social accountability in the academic world of health. So that if you thought social accountability was not that important, here they are. People are putting up even awards to recognize people who have excelled in this area. So this Charles Bolden International Social Accountability Award aims to celebrate people or organizations. The award could be to individuals, could be to departments, could be to institutions as a whole, if they have shown that their performance respects social accountability. We in the MEPI world have been putting a lot of attention. When you examine what people are doing, they're asking questions which amount to social accountability. As I will illustrate later, for example, looking at admissions. How are we admitting? Should we change? Should we maintain a status quo? That is a response which illustrates that institutions are trying to be socially accountable by recognizing the landscape and the way it is changed, that we need to do business differently. So the MEPI has got what is called programmatic awards, has got linked awards, and is also supporting a coordinating center which is supposed to oversee or facilitate linkage and communication between these various institutions. What MEPI has done is to set up a network or a community of learners across Africa who are paying attention to issues, not simply medical education. That's where we started, and that's how the calls were designed. But where we are today, it is health professions education. So there's a network of 30 regional partners across Africa, which include also, and this is yet another development, there is much closer collaboration between the training institutions and the Ministries of Health, and the Ministries of Education. Not institutions just standing and working alone, but reaching out to those ministries so that the three can do a better job. But also other stakeholders being involved, like those at the periphery, in the districts, non-government organizations, and so on and so forth. So, I've mentioned medical improvement in medical education training. Maybe I should just keep that. Community-based training is one of those areas that has received a lot of interest and emphasis within MEPI. Look at the case of Uganda. Incidentally, when we went into this, Makerere could have gone alone. Mara University could have gone in alone. But we decided, Oguru University, Kampala International, we decided to go in as a bundle, as a group, so that we work together as a consortium of institutions to try and address Uganda's challenges in health professions education and strengthening health systems. So all the institutions are paying a lot of attention to community-based education. They are looking at sites out there where they can send their students to have that community experience as a way of addressing the 5 or 10 kilometer syndrome. Those are things I heard at the tail end when I walked in. Now, this map, you probably don't see it very well from the back. This is a map of Uganda. And you can see all these dots or chickens or whatever scattered right across Uganda. Those are sites where our group called MESAO, Medical Education for Equitable Services to all Ugandans. That's what we codenamed our consortium. Can you imagine the creativity there? And the medical education for equitable services to all Ugandans. That our institutions are not just there to train and train. We want equitable services for Ugandans. And so we identified sites which are spread all over the country where the students can go. And that is one of the fascinating experiences for the students. Some of you, it may be a surprise, that actually this 10-kilometer syndrome is real, in the sense that students who have been born and bred in Kampala or in other large towns don't know much about what is happening 50 kilometers beyond that place. And they are educated also here. They just don't know. Now when they go out there, they are saying, I never knew what life is like out there. It is opening their eyes and ears. This is a double-edged sword. Students may end up interested to going back and serve because they have seen there is a need and there's an appreciation by people out there. But it could also play the other way, in that students may say, those are too difficult. Those areas are too difficult to go and work. I've seen it. I don't have to experience it again. I've done it as a student. That's it. So it is a double-edged sword, and we need to see how to address it. As part of our MESHA consortium, we do produce a newsletter, and I saw a pile outside there, and I was wondering, we produce a newsletter every quarter to share ideas as what is going on within the network, and it's a great learning experience as you share. When we meet with people from other countries, the same. You are fascinated that KCMC can do the kind of e-learning they are doing. So other institutions go and say, well, we can also do it, and they start the same. So there is a rapid diffusion of innovations or new ideas across the consortium or across Africa. Research capacity I mentioned, probably I should not go into it again. Again, NIH being what it is, they are trying to track the resources that these MEPI institutions are now getting over time in order to support research. And this is a graph that shows 2008 to 2012. It's a graph, of course, which started a little before MEPI started. But I put it up here, obviously, because I see Makerere has got a very tall bar compared to others. Information technology. I'll not go back to that. And this is a lady from Botswana who is really fascinated by what e-learning can do. And so they have introduced e-learning fairly early. Their medical school is just 5 years old. I think they are graduating, or they have just graduated their first batch of students. And as you see her, excitement with what e-learning can do for them. And then you find some older people talking to students about different issues that relate to their education. The point here is it is fascinating. When you create time and talk to students, the issues, the ideas they have, you see bright minds. And you begin to ask yourself the question, what do we do to these bright minds when they come to our institutions? We may, as was being said, the example, I think it was from Philippines, was it? Some students feel frustrated when they're in our institutions, that we are not providing the fertilizers to make them actually achieve what they want to achieve. So MEPI has stimulated a re-examination of admissions, as I mentioned, and here at Makerere and with our partner institutions in Uganda, all the schools together, we've been discussing how can we change, or first of all, should we change the way students are selected for admission to a health professions program? Or should there be a change? If there's going to be a change, what criteria should be used to decide on who is selected? And we should have very fair processes for selecting those individuals. Tracking graduates is another issue that is really being looked at aggressively. With Capacity Plus, we have designed systems for tracking graduates right from actually the time they are admitted as students to graduation and beyond graduation. So again, MEPI has made this possible in the last 5 years. Lastly, issues of accreditation. And again, Dr. Katumba Sentongo, I think I heard you saying that accreditation through the East African community, for example, is helpful because it overcomes the local politics, which may be difficult to deal with. Accreditation is so important as a means of improving quality of education and training. And therefore, we need to pay a lot of attention to processes of accreditation, mechanisms of accreditation of our institutions, our program. Because if you accredit an institution, it doesn't mean every program running in that institution is of quality. You need to also accredit the programs themselves. And as part of MEPI, one of the things we did right from the beginning is developing criteria for accrediting those community training sites that I showed earlier on the map of Uganda. How are we going to ensure that the sites that are selected are good quality and have potential for providing quality training? Accreditation is something that we need to do a lot more about to ensure that quality is maintained. So in case you need additional information, there are some links here which one can access, and there's plenty. But summarizing, to me, MEPI has been a real transformational force across Africa in the institutions which are participating. How do we now influence those other institutions which are not part of MEPI is a big challenge. And also, secondly, how do we sustain the achievements and interests that have been generated during these 5 years? Because this program will end of 2015, September 2015, and if there are no resources to continue, then sustainability is threatened. And that is an issue that is very much on our minds as we plan the way forward. I thank you for your attention.